Welcome in, and we're back at it with more MLS games coming fast and furious this weekend. It's the second to last full match day of the regular season, going down on Saturday for MLS Week 37 after we just saw many teams, almost all of them, playing on Wednesday in Week 36. Now, teams that didn't play on Wednesday were NYCFC, RSL, SKC. Now, RSL and SKC, while they didn't play, they'll be playing each other, so there's no real rest advantage there, and as well as Portland and San Jose. Plus, we also have Dallas and Colorado who didn't play on Wednesday. However, they were supposed to play, but their game got delayed through weather. So they didn't play, they did sit around for most of the night waiting to see if they would. Still, only Colorado in the West and Toronto in the East have officially been eliminated. Spots 8 and 9 are open in the Eastern playoffs, while spots 7, 8, and 9 are still open in the West. Now, thanks to everybody who has liked these videos all season and subscribed to the channel. If you haven't already, please give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, share the content, and keep spreading the word about this channel, as all of that will help out. Now, let's get into the 4 games from Saturday that I have split out into 2 different parlays here. Number 1, it's all going down in the Eastern Conference, and it's Atlanta and Columbus. This, to me, clearly looks like it could be the most exciting game of the weekend. It's the second to last game for both of these teams. Now, Columbus went into Wednesday not in the top 4, and they ended it in the top 4 after they won 2-1 in New England. Atlanta started Wednesday not in the top 4, and they stayed that way after losing 3-2 to Philadelphia, though they fought back from being down 3-0 at the half. Now, Columbus are 4th with 53 points, and Atlanta are 6th with 49. New England are tucked in between with 52 points and with home field. So it's important for all of these teams. Atlanta has to go for this, and they have to make up some ground to try to get that home field. This game has to have goals, in my opinion. Columbus leads the league in goals with 64, followed by Atlanta with 63. Atlanta has allowed the second most goals of any playoff team with 50, only better than Portland's 51. Columbus is first in XG overall, while Atlanta is 4th in the East in XG. Columbus is first in attacking third touches. They're second in penalty area touches. Atlanta is 4th in shots on target. Columbus is 5th in shots on target. Atlanta games have averaged the highest goals per match at 3.53. Columbus games have averaged the second highest goals per match at 3.38. Atlanta is tied in first with Vancouver for both teams to score bets this season, cashing at 72%, while Columbus are right behind those two teams in third for 69% of their games, seeing both teams to score. Atlanta have seen the second most games go over 2.5 in the whole league at 23-9. Columbus have conceded a goal in 29 of 38. They've also scored a goal in 35 of 38 in all of their competitions throughout 2023. Atlanta's only failed to score once in 14 games across all competitions. Now, if we look at the previous meetings between these teams as well, in the last 4 meetings between them, we've seen a combined 19 goals. 7 of those came in March when Columbus won 6-1 at home. The 3 previous scores were 2-2, 2-1 for Columbus, and 3-2 for Atlanta. Columbus are 6-1-1 versus Atlanta in the past 8 as well. So throw all of those very impressive offensive stats and goal-scoring numbers together. I'm not sure who comes out on top, but I do think we see a goal from each and at least a second from somebody. So let's go both teams to score and over 2.5 with Atlanta and Columbus. Now that alone comes in around minus 155. So I'm going to throw one more game in there to make this a little more manageable. I'm going to go to Orlando and New England. Now, New England won 3-1 in Gillette in June, and they've owned Orlando recently, being undefeated in 8 games. We've also seen both teams to score hit in 10 of the past 12 between these teams. But it's Orlando who's in the better position right now and second in the East with 57 points, while New England are 5th with 52. With 3 games left, New England could still catch Orlando, and therefore the Lions need to win here to lock up that home field advantage in the playoffs. Orlando did win on Wednesday, going to Nashville and winning 1-0 on the road. They're undefeated in 3, and they have just 1 loss in 9 in MLS. They've also only have 3 losses in their past 22 in MLS as well. And when it comes to scoring, especially if you look at just home scoring for Orlando at Exploria Stadium, they've scored a goal in 14 of 16, and they're undefeated as well in their past 11 when playing at home. Now, New England didn't win on Wednesday. They lost 2-1 at home to Columbus, and they now have just 1 win in 6. Those last 6 have all seen goals. Lots of goals, though, with the both teams to score bet being 6-0, and both teams to score over 2.5 being 5-1. Orlando have kept back-to-back clean sheets, though. So in this parlay, rather than going both teams to score, which has been the trend in New England games, I think I'm just going to ask Orlando to score, and that will shorten this down to minus 118 with Orlando to score and both teams to score, and over 2.5 with Atlanta and Columbus. Now, the second parlay, I'm going over to the West, and I'm taking a similar approach here with the Minnesota and LA Galaxy game as they did with Atlanta and Columbus. Now, these teams are fighting for home field. They're not fighting for home field, sorry, like that first game, but they are fighting for the playoffs. Sort of. Both are hanging on by a thread, and they saw their playoff hopes take a serious hit on Wednesday. LA were tied 1-1 with Seattle, and they conceded in stoppage time to lose 2-1. That was just their second loss in 7, but they also have only one win in those 7 games as well. But all of their games have been incredibly wide open. If we look at their recent score lines, there's a 2-1, 3-3, 3-3, 4-3, 4-2, and 2-2 in the last 6. Now, Minnesota, they also lost on Wednesday, and they lost bad, losing 5-1 in LAFC. They're winless in 7, and their last 4 scores have been 5-1, 1-1, 2-1, and 4-3. So we're also seeing a fair amount of goals in their games. Now, how either of these teams are still technically alive is wild, but here we are, because basically almost everybody makes the playoffs in MLS. So even though these teams have not been winning lately, they still have a chance. Minnesota are 3 points back, and LA are 6. The Galaxy also have a game in hand on many of these teams, but they don't have a game in hand in Dallas, who are the 9th place team. So it's very unlikely either of these teams make it, but they still do have a chance. Now, when I was going back through all those high-scoring games these teams have been playing in, that 4-3 was when these teams last played, and we just saw this matchup on September 21st, and that was the 4-3 Galaxy come from behind win. Now, past scores between these teams before that have also been 3-2 for Minnesota, 1-1, 3-3, and 3-0 Minnesota. Only 1 of 7 and 2 of 13 all-time meetings have seen less than 2 goals. 11 of those 13 have seen 3 or more goals, and 9 of 13 have not only seen both teams to score, but also the over 2.5. So I think we should see some goals here. These teams always seem to play to it. Historically, they've both been playing pretty wide open games with the season winding down. I have one concern in that these teams are probably realizing that the playoffs are going to be out of reach, and maybe one or both of them just lie down here and give up. But I also think that they are still technically alive, and they both have decent offensive talent with very questionable defending. And there's nothing, no reason not to go all out here and try to make the playoffs, which will probably turn into a pretty wide open game. A draw does nothing for anybody. So as soon as somebody gets one goal, we should probably see some goals from both sides. So let's go both teams to score an over 2.5. You could do that probably by itself at minus 125. But again, if we want to get this a little closer to even money, I'm going to add one more leg into this parlay. And I'll go to Austin and LAFC. Both of these teams have been in poor form. LAFC have been winless in 4. They had been winless in 4 games in all competitions, and they also hadn't scored in 4 games. In MLS, they had just 1 win in 7. And then they exploded for 5 goals at home to Minnesota on Wednesday. Buanga had a hat trick, his 2nd this year in MLS, and his 4th in all competitions, and he's now taking the lead in the Golden Boot race as well. LAFC are 3rd, and they've clinched the playoffs, but they've not clinched home field, so they still need to fight here. Austin were doing everything in their power to really not make the playoffs. If we look at their recent trends, they were winless in 8 in MLS, and they were winless in 10 overall if you go back to the Leagues Cup. But then they suddenly came out and won 3-0 at home to DC on Wednesday, and they are 10th now in the West. They're 3 points back of Dallas, who are in 9th. Now, considering Dallas have a game in hand, it's also likely too little too late for Austin. But maybe Austin will go with a bang here. They did just come out and win and score 3 goals. Now, despite those losses, they've still scored in 19 of 20 in all competitions recently. And the 2 times that they didn't, those games were on the road. They've yet to fail. They haven't failed to score at home in MLS since way back in May. LAFC have won each of the past 2 when these teams played, and they were in LA. Both of those games are by 3-0 scores in this head-to-head matchup. Now, one of those came this season, but it was way back in April. And if you look at the 7 all-time meetings, LAFC are 5-0-2, 5 wins, 2 losses. And 2 or more goals have been scored in all 7 of those games, while 3 or more goals have been scored in 5 of those 7 games. So these teams usually play to goals. They both still have something on the line here. I'll just go over 1.5 in case it's a both team to score or one team just gets 2 or 3 on their own. So if we go Austin and LAFC over 1.5 with Minnesota and LA Galaxy over 2.5 and both teams to score, that'll be plus 110. Those are going to be the 2 different parlays I go for. Now, here are some other thoughts on a few other games that I was looking at but didn't quite make the cut since I've already done some research here. If you want to look at the Red Bulls in Toronto in June, these teams drew 0-0 in Toronto. That was the first scoreless draw, though, between them since 2013. It was also the first time that New York failed to score versus Toronto in 16 games, but it did extend an undefeated streak versus TFC to their current run of 8 games. Now, when was the last time Toronto kept a clean sheet? Well, it was almost way back in that game against the Red Bulls in June, but they also did draw with Chicago 2 games later. But after that, it's been 18 games and across all competitions since Toronto kept the ball out of their net. That streak continued Wednesday when they lost 3-0 in Charlotte. They're currently on a run of 1-0-15 in all competitions, and they've been shut out in 3 of 4 and outscored 15-3 in their past 5 losses. Meanwhile, the Red Bulls went to Cincinnati and they won 2-1 on Wednesday on a night when Cincinnati was presented with the Supporters Shield. Now, it was a rotated Cincinnati squad as they had already wrapped up the Shield, but a road win versus the top team is still impressive. The Red Bulls are just 1 point back of the playoffs with 2 games to play, so they do need the points. New York likely wins this game. I was looking to hopefully just go New York to score, but that's past minus 1,000, maybe past 1,200, so that's not really worth it. So if you wanted to throw New York into a parlay to win, that could be an option. But, these teams did draw 0-0 already, and New York's not a team that scores a lot of goals. And here's a couple other games I'll just touch on quickly. RSL and SKC. It was 2-2 in Kansas City earlier this season. RSL clinched the playoffs, but not the home field. SKC still have a shot at the playoffs themselves, so not sure what will happen in that one. If we look at Houston and Colorado, it was 0-0 in Colorado in July. And while Colorado has struggled to score this year, and Houston's defense at home has been airtight historically, both teams' score has hit in 9 of the past 11. Houston's amazing at home. They're 10-4-2. They've scored 31. They've allowed 10. Colorado have been bad everywhere, especially on the road where they're 2-3-10, and they've been outscored 32-11. But they also didn't play Wednesday because their game got delayed by weather, so perhaps Colorado will be rested. It's probably not enough to get the win in Houston. Houston to win could be a good parlay piece as well. This game a few weeks ago would have looked to be a top game on the card on Saturday, Miami and Cincinnati, but Messi probably is going to be out again. Cincinnati could go for the points record. They also could be resting players again and lose like they did on Wednesday, so we'll skip that one. And one more, Seattle and Vancouver. Seattle clinched the playoffs, but not the home field. Vancouver still has a shot at home field, being 5th, and they're tied with RSL for 4th with 46 points, so they can still try to jump into that top 4. In the 2 games these teams have played this season, both were in Vancouver. Vancouver won 2-0. Seattle won 3-2. There's been 2 or more goals scored between these teams in 10 straight meetings. Seattle, though, is undefeated in 7 right now in the league. Not head-to-head, just overall in MLS this seaseason. Vancouver is 4-3-2 in their past 9. They're undefeated in 3, and they've scored multiple goals in all 3. So these teams have been seeing a lot of goals. They're both in decent form. Possibly both teams to score over 1.5 in a parlay, something like that. Seattle probably to score as well. But I'll leave it at that. The 2 parlays that we went with earlier and a few betting notes for some of the other games. Now, if you haven't already, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. Drop your picks into the comments, and good luck with all of your MLS Week 37 picks this weekend.